Hello everyone. So, this is Spiritual Successor. Basic premise is I'm a game developer, and for the past 2 videos I've been trying to recreate the game mechanics of Diddy Kong Racing. But the end goal of this is we're trying to make a spiritual successor to the game, so I'm basically going to take what I like from the game, and this could eventually become its own game, with its own levels, own everything, and maybe it becomes a commercial product one day that other people can play. All I know is that I've always wanted a spiritual successor to exist for Diddy Kong Racing. They never got an official sequel, so why not make a spiritual successor to it that improves upon what it does best and improves its weaknesses as well. But first off, we want to try and get this to, at a minimum, play like Diddy Kong Racing, and then from there figure out what needs to be changed, tweaked, whatever. So, to review, here's where we're at. We can drive, we can turn, and the camera will actually tilt so that the turn feels a little more intense. We can drift. And we can back up. In actual Diddy Kong Racing, you actually can't back up. You can only brake. So, what we're going to try and do is get a little more detailed. We're going to check out anything that I missed in regards to how the vehicle kind of drives. Now, it's okay if it's not 100% exact, but for the most part, we want the controls and the mechanisms that the vehicle uses to be the same. So to compare, we can drive, we can turn, we drift, or we can drift. So one thing I'm noticing here is that the camera will actually zoom into the player when you're not driving. And when you start driving, the camera will actually move back a bit. So when you go up slants and such, the camera follows behind the player, but it does not try to match its rotation. So meaning if you're driving downwards, the camera doesn't tilt downwards, really. Or does it? Okay. So when we drive up, the camera kind of tilts to the driver. And we have that issue still. So there's 2 things I want to do. Make it so the vehicle always tries to stand upright, and make it so that the camera does not tilt with the vehicle. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so I've tweaked how the camera operates. I'm going to drive up to the ramp. So now the camera no longer will tilt to how the vehicle is tilted, at least on the x-axis. So when you're driving up or down something, the camera's rotation will just remain how it was. Now the next thing we need to deal with is the camera being, or the vehicle being able to be flipped over. That's not desirable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something called a ground check. So basically every frame or so we're going to check to see if there's ground underneath us, and if there is, we're going to check how far away it is. And if it's too far away, we're going to say that we're not on the ground. I'm going to make a boolean called check for ground, or a method called check for ground, and that's going to be stored in this value here called grounded. So now we're going to use something called a raycast. Basically think of a raycast like a straight line that gets shot from a position that you say, and it goes in a direction that you say, and the moment it hits anything that has collision, it's going to tell you what it hit, where it hit it, and basically that's very useful because you know exactly what object it hit, where it hit, and you also, from that, can also know how far away it is. Gotta raycast it. We're creating something here called a raycast hit. This will remember all that information I just talked about, it's going to remember what was hit, where it was hit, and how far away it was. Now we're also going to create something called a ray. A ray is just going to have information for where we want the ray to originate from, or the raycast to originate from. If that makes any sense at all. I know all this makes sense to me, but I probably sound like an alien to a lot of people. But hopefully this is still entertaining. Okay, so our origin, we want to start from our vehicle. So transform.position, that's our position in the world. And then direction, we want to use transform.up. Now you might be thinking, well, that's going to shoot the raycast above us. Well, if we do a negative value here, it's now going to be shot below us. Now we need to actually set up the raycast. So we have an if statement. If physics.raycast. So physics.raycast returns a boolean. So it's going to return true or false. It will return true if it hit anything. It's going to return false if it hit nothing. So we're going to also input our information. We're also going to give it a raycast hit. Now we can also say how far we want to shoot before it gives up. I'm not going to set that for now, but we will want something called a layer mask. Crap, I have to give it a max distance value. Okay, I guess we have a max distance of 100. And there we go. So now, we're gonna do a thing here. So, this is gonna return a true or false value, whether or not we're grounded or not. So we're gonna type in our conditions for what we need to be grounded. I gotta add an if statement here. If raycast hit.transform is not equal to null. So basically all that means is, did we find something? Did we hit an object in the game world? If so, we want to know, is the distance less than, let's say 0.1. So 0.1 will be our minimum requirement. And if nothing has been returned, we're going to return false at the end here. And okay, so now we know if we're grounded. There's a few things we don't want to allow if we're not grounded. For example, all this code here should only be allowed if we're grounded. Wheel rotation, I'll allow that to happen outside of being grounded. Now what else? We got current speed. So all these are going to get an extra condition that checks to see if they're grounded. So basically, if we're not grounded, we're not allowed to accelerate or decelerate. And basically the vehicle will be stuck with whatever physics it was given. Also, if we're not grounded, we're going to try and reorient the vehicle to its default rotation. That way it's never falling downwards at an angle that would cause it to flip upside down. It's not realistic, but again, you want to remove things that would make the game unfun to play. We want to get rid of as many hindrances as possible. So, we're not grounded, and then we're going to fix up our rotation. Okay, so we got that code added. Let's see how it works out. Okay, we can't move. So we're just adjusting our tolerance for what ground is. Okay. Now we're going to want to go up a slant. One thing that was notorious for flipping these vehicles over was the spheres that I created. So let's see how this thing reacts. So now my vehicles can't really be flipped over anymore. So now this thing should be fine on basically any terrain, hopefully. So with that all done, you've got a vehicle that works. And if you want to emulate like the concept of having different drivers with different handling and such, all you would literally have to do is play around with the handling values, the turning values and all that. And that's how you would get your different drivers. But ultimately, you're interfacing with the exact same code for each single driver. It's just they have different values entered in for how they turn, how fast they turn, yada yada yada. So you could like have a vehicle that drives really fast but has poor handling, or have a vehicle that drives slow but has great handling, or have a vehicle that drives fast and has great handling, which I think is pretty cool. So I guess, I don't know how long this video is going to be, maybe shorter than the other ones, but we got a vehicle done, and if I'm going to start working on like an airplane or hovercraft's going to be an interesting one considering my least favorite vehicle. So how can I just improve that one in general? That vehicle is bad enough that I don't want to replicate it. I want to do better. But as for flying planes and just the driving mechanics, those I almost feel like they can be left alone. I know there's some drivers that are absolutely god-awful when it comes to steering and driving in general. So Pipsy's usually my go-to, and that's how I'm basing this driver off of. Maybe some of you have preferences for the other drivers, so that's something I'll have to like look into at some point. Get other people to play test this and get their feedback on what they want to see from a driver. I almost forgot something important. I forgot to have the camera, you know, go further behind the player a little bit. So let's do that quick. Oh. Okay. That's weird. There we go. Now to compare. Okay. So their value is not quite as high, so I'm going to do half that. See what that looks like. It's kind of cool too, so every time we lose speed, the camera kind of zooms in as well. Not sure if that happens in Diddy Kong Racing, but can't say I dislike the effect that I'm getting. So yeah, I think that about wraps up the vehicle stuff. Now you might be saying, well, what about drifting trails and all that stuff? Well, what I say to that is all that sounds like cosmetic fluff that will be necessary eventually, but again, it's not crucial to the functioning of the game. So stuff like that I'll worry about at a later date, but yeah, this about wraps it up for the vehicle thing. And yeah, if you like this video, feel free to like it. And if you want to keep up with my future content, feel free to subscribe. I guess this Spiritual Successor series will be kind of alongside me doing my Quality Assurance series. So Quality Assurance, I play other people's games and, you know, give my critique and whatnot. And Spiritual Successor, I'm going to check out, it's going to be me trying to recreate games that I feel should have gotten a sequel, but they never did. And so Diddy Kong Racing is I feel deserves a spiritual successor, and that's what I am gonna do. So I've rambled long enough. I'll see you guys next video. Hopefully we'll be working on planes.